Welcome to the World Awaits.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust. Welcome back to the World Awaits. How are you all? How's your week been, Kirsty?
Oh my God, I've had a massive few weeks and I've just finally got my feet back under the desk. So I've been on a Viking cruise in the Med, which you might have seen if you're following me on socials at Kirsty Wrights. And we were off the ship every day and we covered 4 countries. So the highlight for me was Dubrovnik in Croatia. Oh my God, I just loved that place. It was just so beautiful. It was a gorgeous old town and just had a really good vibe about it. And then when we got back, we had family here and we headed on down to my favourite local haunt, which is Phillip Island, which the weather was not kind to us. But anyway, look, it was still great. We went and visited Phillip Island Winery, which I hadn't been to, which is a gorgeous winery. Really lovely, and it was really nice experience. They have live music there on Saturdays if you're ever heading down that way. And obviously their own wine brand, which was delicious. And then, we showed them around some of the wildlife. Also had a cover story come out in the New Zealand Herald about Songsar in Cambodia and another on the yoga festival in Tahiti that I went to recently. So I can put links to those in the show notes. And also a piece, actually I wrote a piece I'd been researching about overcrowding on safaris. So that's an interesting topic I think that needs more coverage. So but how's your week been, Belle?
I am really interested to read that safari story because it's something really close to my heart. I am celebrating my own little victory, and it's much less worthy, but it's about a piece I wrote in for The Age in the Sydney Morning Herald about
do you mean less worthy than being named Travel Writer of the Year for the second time in almost a row?
God, there's that. No, saying less worthy than animal conservation. So this story is, it's not one of the big issues, but it is a big issue because everybody just fired up about it. It is about how tea drinkers get a raw deal. So I actually put a call out to form a tea party. Get it? To object how hotels will finesse the espresso, coo over the pour over, and obsess with the cold press. Meanwhile, we, the rusted-on tea drinkers, and I'm putting you in here as well, Kirsty, we are ignored and we get served these crappy pesticide-laden budget supermarket tea bags. And it really hit a nerve. So I'm going to continue calling it out. I always make the point when I'm in hotels, when I'm doing an inspection and stuff, I'll say to somebody, dude, what is with the crap tea bags? Seriously. And these hotels are saying, oh, we embody a place and, we're all about the location and stuff like that. And then you get some dodgy ass crap tea bag beside the espresso machine. I'm done. I'm done with it. I consider it my civic duty as a travel journalist. So apart from that, celebrating that win, I have actually just caroled myself in the house. I'm recharging the batteries after a busy couple of months in Central Australia, Tassie and the Maldives. So let's all lie down for Christmas. That's my motto.
Yes, as you know, I'm out for good tea too, and I think it's a great crusade there that you're on. And it was very hard to get a good chai latte, I have to say, when I was over in Europe.
You just got to do what we all do. You've got to start packing it and traveling with you. I've got to stash tea bags. Yeah. So I want to hear from readers. Do you carry tea bags with you when you travel? If you are a serious,
yeah, but a bit harder to carry the sticky chai and the coffee machine to make it in. But yeah. But so anyway, we are all going to hear soon about the Maldives, which I can't wait to hear about. But before we get into that, a new Finder survey has found Aussies are prepared to practically go broke to get a break. Well, maybe not broke, but we're all getting highly creative to ensure that we can pay for our holidays.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, almost half of those in this survey are looking at how they can make money or cut the budget to ensure they can afford a getaway. With more than 20% of people responding to this survey are doing things like recycling bottles and cans for cash. And look, I totally do this because it's a win-win all round. And 14% are selling unwanted household items and clothing to pay for their trip. And I think, isn't that the whole point of Facebook Marketplace, right?
Yeah, for sure, if you trust it. And about 13% have also taken on a second job or side hustle, while 25% are sacrificing their social lives. And Find a Money expert Rebecca Pike says it shows how desperate some people are for a holiday because they're not just cutting back, but people are really hustling hard to make it happen.
And sadly, she says that travel for many isn't affordable anymore, but people are willing to sacrifice everyday comforts, and I hope she doesn't mean good tea bags, just to make it happen. Because there was a shift away from spontaneous getaways to strategic planning. People are using side hustles, points hacking, and selling pre-loved items to get that travel currency. Look, Kirsty, we're an anomaly because we travel for work. But what do you see friends and family do to pay for holidays?
Yeah, look, I think if it's a priority, and remember for some it's really not, but for our listeners, of course, you're here for the travel inspo, so of course it would be. And for you, and I have friends, lots of friends like this too, it's about, I guess, reviewing where you go. So maybe instead of Europe, it might be some of my friends would just go somewhere closer to home. So they might go somewhere like Bali, and also somewhere where there's a more favorable exchange rate. So because and also, we have to remember that travel doesn't have to be about cost. You can always just go and experience places close at home. And because we were just at Phillip Island, that was a really good reminder to us of that because we had family down there. We were taking them to places and doing things that we wouldn't normally do. So it was a really good reminder that you can still experience something new if you see a place close to home like a tourist.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. I mean, we do things like we pool travel with friends, so we split the costs on holidays, and staying close to home here in Victoria. In fact, you will find me down the Mornington Peninsula this Christmas, back to my heartland, because we've got a family house down there that lets us stay without the prohibitive price of tags of renting a beach house in summer. So all the extended family is down there at that time, and I think it's just really beautiful, and it doesn't absolutely bust the bank.
And so listen out for the great debate again about Mornington Peninsula versus Phillip Island after the Christmas break. And we put a link to this research in the show notes.
Absolutely.
Turquoise lagoons, incredible sea life, over water villas, and must be the Maldives. This week, Belle's my guest, and she's taking us to this beautiful island nation to see whether it lives up to the hype. So, firstly, Belle, for those who don't know, where are they?
Well, let's start with our little geography lesson here. This little archipelago is southwest of India and Sri Lanka. There are just under 1,200 coral islands in the Maldives in 26 atolls. And only 200 of those islands was inhabited. All these stats just blew my mind. What is really interesting is that half the number of those islands are inhabited by Maldivians and the other half are tourism resorts. And fascinatingly, that balance is changing. But look, the capital is Malé, which is one of the most densely populated capitals in the world. And it's not because it's got a ginormous population, but because the islands are just so insanely small. So everybody is chock on top of each other. So when you look at the size of the Maldives, it's only 870 kilometres from the top to the bottom and just 130 kilometres wide. So it's absolutely tiny. In fact, when the first plane landed in the Maldives in 1960, Malé was just too small to accommodate an airport, so they put the landing strip on the neighbouring island, Hulhule Island. And I've got to say, the first 2 times I visited the Maldives, to get to Malé from the airport, you had to catch a small boat called a donie across the stretch of water from the airport to the capital. Now, there's actually a large bridge connecting the two islands. So when I was there last month, that was the very first change that I noticed flying in.
Yeah, wow, interesting. So, how do you get there from Australia?
Well, I've got to say, we are terribly unlucky here in Australia that there are no direct flights from Australia. But look, watch this space because I anticipate news to be announced very, very shortly that will change this. So at the moment, most people fly to Singapore with Singapore Airlines and then they transfer on to the Maldives. You can also fly via Kuala Lumpur with Malaysian and even with budget carrier Air Asia, which I find is really fascinating. This time I flew with Sri Lankan Airlines and I transited in Colombo. It's only an hour and a half from Colombo to Malé. It's probably the closest of the transfers. So it really depends on your budget and the best connections because often we are stuck with quite a long wait in those transit countries. But every airline worth its salt flies into the Maldives, including all the Middle Eastern carriers. Turkish is in there, Aeroflot comes from Russia, British Airways, and all the Chinese carriers are in there too. So, who's not there really is the question.
Yeah, wow, and it's fascinating. So tell us a bit about where you stayed.
Well, look, firstly, almost nobody stays in Malé, the capital. While it has improved, it is generally regarded as pretty dreary, and you can cover it off in a short time. The highlight for me when I visited on a previous trip to the Maldives was the fish market, which sounds kind of rando, but when you go in, you see these absolutely enormous whole tuna sold. Like at the end of the day, they'll just be flogging it off for a couple of dollars a kilo of this beautiful fish. I mean, it's not the ideal way to see the famous marine life, but there you go. I better say, most visitors don't go to Malé. They stay at the airport and connect straight onto their resort, either by speedboat for those resorts close to Malé, by a commercial flight to one of the domestic airports dotted around the atolls, or via seaplane.
Now we're talking, who doesn't love a seaplane?
Absolutely. Like you, I do love a little plane. The smaller the better. It's kind of like Fiji in the sense that there are whole fleets of twin otters, if you're an av geek like me, skipping about amongst the islands, between the islands. So these planes seat up to 19 people. And they have the most beautiful runway in the world. They take off and land on water. And I just love the seaplane terminal in the Maldives, seeing all of these private planes whipping out to the ultra luxe resorts. The seaplane transfers are the most indirect and also the most expensive way to get to your resort. Alternatively, for a lot of them, you can take a commercial flight to the nearest airport and then you take a speedboat onto your island. But on the seaplanes, the scenery is just incredible, and they fly much lower than the regular planes. So I mean, look, jump onto my Instagram. I have taken so many videos just of what we were looking at as we are flying over these atolls. But look, when you are planning your Maldives adventure, let me remind you that these beautiful little seaplanes only fly visual line of sight, which means they have to be able to see where they're going. They can't rely on radar. So they don't fly at night and they won't fly in very poor weather. So you have to ensure that your international flight arrives in the Maldives with enough time to get onto a seaplane. Generally, the last ones go out to the islands at about 3:30 in the afternoon. Otherwise, your transfers have to be done by commercial flights. And the most incredible thing about it, actually, Kirsty, was none of the pilots wear shoes. So you're flying out on this tiny plane, and with the first time we flew out, there was only 7 or so of us in the plane. Pilots are barefoot. It's just amazing. And that is when you go, I'm on a seaplane with a pilot that doesn't even have any shoes on. I must be in the Maldives.
Yes, and that's a really good tip actually about timing, because often you don't think about those sorts of things about coordinating, because the transfers you just assume are there waiting and ready for you. So what was your resort like, and why did you choose to go there?
Well, I stayed in 2 resorts. I was there for a week and I split my time between 2 of them. The first one I stayed at was Niama Private Islands, which is down south of Malé in the Dala Atoll. And then the second resort was north of Malé at the Yavani Plus Faras in the Bar Atoll. They're both owned by minor hotels and they are both very different hotels.
Yeah, and let's delve into that a little bit, because my understanding is that from the Maldives that you really have to choose the resort based on what you want to do, because the experiences are so different, based, depending on their geographic location.
Absolutely. Look, yeah, as I've said, the Maldives is not huge, but it is incredibly diverse. So first, I'd say it is the ultimate fly and flop destination because the scenery, no matter where you stay, is absolutely spectacular. The islands are surrounded by lagoons that hold back the Indian Ocean. The sand is blindingly white. The sunsets are magnificent, best enjoyed from your pool lounger, or if the positioning is right, and it often is, enjoyed from your bed, or that gorgeous little beach bar shack. But look, back to the activities and those 2 properties. The unique point about Niama Private Island is it is one of the very few islands in the Maldives with a naturally occurring surf break on its shores. It breaks right off the northern point, which is called Vodi Point. And so while there's surfing in other areas of the Maldives, such as down south a few years ago, I was at the Como Malafushi, where dedicated surf tour companies run surfing trips. But often they might be on liveaboard boats, or you've got to go out to the atolls, and that is very different to this as a beach break.
So just apart from surfing, what were you doing to while away your days?
Yeah, absolutely. And they do beginner surf lessons. I mean, what a bragging right that is. I learnt to surf in the Maldives. Niama is a great one because it's just refurbished. It's newly refurbished this year. So the resort's only 8 years old, but sun, sand, and surf do take their toll, not only on your skin, but on the resorts as well. So we were lucky enough to stay in one of the newly renovated overwater villas. And like most resorts, they balance those overwater villas, which do come with a higher price point, with its beach villas. And Nyama has a lot of beach villas hidden between the palms, which are super private and right on the beachfront. And they are absolutely popular with families with young children because you can simply wander out of the villa and out onto your little slice of beach to swim in very shallow, safe, and incredibly warm waters. So I did do a lot of that. And then they also run day trips out to see turtles, champagne sunsets, go on a dive tour, and all of those water sports that you'd expect. And what I loved about this resort was that, unlike others, it's also quite sizable. So it's 4 acres spread across 2 interconnecting islands. They've got a little wooden bridge between them. And everybody gets around on these old school beach cruiser bikes, which is just gorgeous. So, you're just cruising through the coconut palms on these sandy trails along the overwater boardwalks. You go to the restaurant for breakfast, out onto one of the beaches for a bit of stand-up paddling. You might take your kids to the kids club, or they all have team clubs on them now with things like FIFA and ping pong and stuff like that. Or you're going to the treetop restaurant Nest, which is beautiful, out to that beach bar where you can watch the surfers. What you cannot cycle to is Niama's specialty restaurant, Edge, which is set a half a kilometre offshore on a pontoon. So at sunset, you take a boat out to this pontoon, to this restaurant, so you can dine on Maldivian lobster as the sun sets across the ocean. And there is, with nothing on the horizon, it really is spectacular. And then on Friday nights, you can follow a staircase on that pontoon down to its underwater restaurant, which turns into a disco. So heartbreakingly, I arrived on a Saturday, so I cannot share with you what it was like dancing underwater. But it was like we went down to the space, and it was just amazing. I have eaten in underwater restaurants, like on the Conrad property at Rangali Island. There was a little bit of guilt, Kirsty, because they serve seafood, so you're sitting there eating a fish, and then its cousin swims past you, and you think,
Oh
"Oh,
my God.
how do they feel about that?"
But I have to say, dining on a pontoon, is on lobster. Oh my God, what an amazing experience! And I think the food would be so good you wouldn't be worrying about the cousins or sisters or the brothers that are swimming around.
And if you're photo, but sorry, and of course, there's no calories in holiday food as well.
Yes, of course. Or drink. But yeah, your videos were so beautiful, and everyone can check those out at global_salsa. So what was the food like? And can you actually try the Maldivian food? And what sort of food is that? Because that all based around obviously the ocean.
I'm glad you asked, Kirsty, because I do love to eat. And one of my favorite things when I'm in places like India or Sri Lanka or the Maldives is breakfast curry. Show me a breakfast curry with paratha, fried bread, and I will show you a contented woman. Also, good tea. Yeah. So ticking all the boxes. On both the resorts I stayed in, they had a Maldivian breakfast station, which I'm really happy to see because, you can eat bacon and eggs and sausages anywhere around the world. But there are 2 foods that underpin Maldivian cuisine, which are, unsurprisingly, coconuts and tuna. Years ago on Conrad Rangali Island, the head chef told me no tuna, no life for the Maldivian kitchen. So oftentimes that breakfast curry is chicken, but traditionally it's more likely to be a fresh tuna curry in a rich sort of tomatoey, coconutty gravy. And I am so okay with that. And chili as well, always chili, because they do love a good chili. They play it down in the resorts, but they serve it on the side. And when you say to the chef, yeah, I can do a bit of chili, they're like, yes, but they still keep it at a lower level to what a Maldivian definition of chili is. So, I just think the food is really fascinating because, you get through to a culture, you understand a culture through its food. And so when you go, it's all about tuna and coconuts, it's like, of course, because you are on a tropical island in the middle of nowhere, right?
Oh my God, all that chat about that incredible food's making me very hungry. But the other property you actually stayed at is actually one that we've featured before, which is Avani plus Fares, which is in the Bar Atoll north of Male. And if you jump back to episode 98, I interviewed freediving conservationist Hanley Prinsloo, and I have to say she's absolutely sold me on the incredible wildlife there too.
Yes, there is a saying here in Bar, it's better in Bar. And I don't know how many times I heard that because the Maldivians just love it as much as everybody else. This resort's only a couple of years old. It is set on what was a 200-year-old coconut plantation on the western edge of the country. So if you are having a little drink, looking west across the Indian Ocean, there is nothing until you hit the coast of Africa at Somalia. And that actually blew my mind. I felt so remote on this island. It was almost disconcerting that you really felt that incredible isolation.
Yeah, amazing. And what was the vibe like there compared to the other one you were staying at?
Yeah, it is a really different animal compared to Niama. It's not a question of the number of rooms because Niama has 134 villas, which range from overwater and beach villas. And then on Avani, there are 176. So they've got overwater villas, they've got the beach villas, and then they've got these pavilion rooms, which are decorated exactly the same as the others, but then they're in small groups. So your families can actually take a couple of them together. It's much more interconnecting. They are at a lower price point. I met this great English couple who said, oh, we were going to stay at the overwater villas and then we realized we could stay for 2 weeks if we stayed in the pavilion rooms. So they were staying on this island for 2 weeks, which I thought was just phenomenal. But there's a very different energy on Avani Plus. I feel Niama is really classic, wonderfully laid back in that Maldivian escape style. Avani has more activities, and that is due to the location. Avani won the Best Dive Resort award at Maldives Travel Trade Awards last year, and it's actually won it a couple of times, and that is fighting off some serious competition. I'll give you an example of because I'm a snorkeler, I'm not a diver. I'm not a bad snorkeler. The house reef on the island at Avani Plus is you literally walk to the end of the beach near Smuggler's Shack, which is a cute little beach bar, and you jump in with your snorkel on and you are diving straight into an aquarium. It's just incredible, the phenomenal amount of fish life around you. Like you'll just have schools of 100 tiny little angelfish flying, tearing past you. They've got, there's things like eels and just Moorish idols. And the numbers are phenomenal. And look, I've snorkeled extensively in the Great Barrier Reef in places like the Great Astrolabe in Fiji, in southern Fiji. On this beach, turtles have been laying their eggs and the hotel protects them. They have about 50 or 60 hatches on the island around the year. And that's just a place where you're having like a sunset drink. It's absolutely phenomenal. There's a drop-off from just a couple of meters offshore and it drops past and people were seeing sharks, nice, friendly, delightful sharks, just off this reef. It absolutely blew my mind, Kirsty, to be completely, no holds barred honest with you. It blew my mind. In fact, I had a chat with Avani Plus Farah's general manager, Judd Rabbage, who is actually Australian, and he lives on the island with his young family. And he's been there a couple of years, and he's going to explain to you why it's better in Bar.
The Bar Atoll is a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. And for example, where we are, certain times of the year, you're standing on the jetty and you've got, giant manta rays even coming past, eagle rays, turtles, sharks. We call them vegetarians, unlike Australian sharks. They're vegetarians in the Maldives. They've got enough food, so they don't try and eat humans, which we're lucky about. But also, look, every kind of marine life you can imagine is there. And because of it's a reserve, there's no fishing. The marine animals are really comfortable coming in close, comfortable with humans as well. So it's that as a destination, as a bar toll, you will not find marine life like that anywhere else in the Maldives. And I think a lot of places other than the Galapagos in the world, it's, you can go to certain areas and just the sheer amount of turtles that'll be on one reef, or, there's a pod of dolphins in the area. They're 1,000 strong. So it's an incredible atoll. It's far enough away, north that you're away from the shipping lines, you're away from normality, and where we are at Avani, we're on the very, very western edge. So you can't see any other islands, as you would have noticed, Bill, when you're on the island. You can see Vakaru just on a nice day, but it's about 15 to 20 minutes by boat. But you can't see any other islands, and that's what really makes us, being on that very western edge, the animals are comfortable to kind of swim in. So, throughout the day, is the amount of marine life you see is fantastic. I've been out now on the up to Halifaro Bay, which is where they all congregate, where the giant manta rays congregate, and we're going out there, and all the Maldivian boys, and I love it. Look, I think, as a leader, when you're there in the Maldives, you should really focus on the locals. We're lucky enough to be expats in their country, and we should always be grateful for that. And so I try, really get involved with the local boys, and they said to me, when we get past this point, just put your head out and you might see some whale sharks. And we saw this, and look, big in Australia, I see the odd fin and I do get a bit of a fright. So I put my head out and I sort of saw, the tail coming in out of the water and got a bit of a fright. But the boys, one of the lads just jumped straight in, and they're giving me grief, obviously working at the hotel, and they said jump. And my wife is pretty quick always to jump in, so she jumped in first, and then I was right behind her, and just swimming with this animal that's 2 or 3 trucks, car sizes, big, and just how gentle they are, and swimming you can see so far in the water, and they're just so relaxed. It was, an incredible experience, absolutely incredible experience.
You can definitely hear the passion in his voice about the wildlife in the Bar Atoll. And particularly, I loved it how he talked about how he jumped in with the whale sharks in the Honeyfares Bay. It's just amazing.
I know. It's absolutely incredible. There you have it from the horse's mouth. Judd also told me, incredibly, the Australians, speaking of animals in traveling around the place, Australians are actually number 5 in the nationalities that visit the Maldives. I was so surprised by that. So the most popular market is Russians, and honestly, if you have a look at their weather, you can see why. With a big, then followed by a lot of Europeans, Germans, and Italians, and then after that, Australians at number 5, which actually really surprised me. And I did he made a really good point when we were chatting that his resort doesn't just focus on one nationality, but it's an eclectic mix of nationalities. So when you're at breakfast, you can hear the Italians over this side, there's Germans here. We heard quite a lot of Dutch were visiting and stuff. So I always find that fascinating. It wasn't the season for, they traditionally had a lot of people coming from Southern Asia, from Hong Kong and Singapore and places like that. I just find that fascinating on land as well. Hilariously, we were on the island at the same time as British reality star Carolyn Stanbury. If you ever watched The Real Housewives of Dubai, she was there with her Spanish footballer husband, Sergio Carollo, who I was happy to be sharing the island with. She was running her Power and Paradise retreats here. I'll leave you to read between the lines on that last comment. She was running her Power and Paradise retreats here in the Maldives. And it was really interesting, actually, to watch how a power influencer couple operates. But it is one of the most aspirational destinations in the world, along with other places such as Tahiti and the Seychelles.
People are madly Googling that footballer's name right now. And so on to more serious issues. The question is, with all this growth, is it going to be sustainable?
Look, I've got to say, that is something top of my mind when I think of the Maldives. It is no surprise. It is one of the lowest lying countries in the world. The highest point is about 2 meters above sea level. So if you are talking about rising sea levels, I'm like, hello, Maldives, what are you doing about it? I did ask Judd about this, and we talked about the Maldives sea rangers who monitor the number of boats and proximity to animals. So, when you jump off a boat to go and swim with a whale shark, you can't just jump on the whale shark. It doesn't work like that. So they are monitoring that and keeping that distance. And they do come and talk to guests about the importance of keeping your distance from animals and staying close by the guides, because I think it's really fascinating. We tend to treat sea animals with a lot less respect than we treat land animals. Everybody is like, okay, they understand how lions or elephants need that space, and honestly, they're very big and they're very bitey as well. But we don't always necessarily think about this when we're talking about sea animals. And the Maldives is changing as well, because you're starting to find new islands that are being man-made or made by humans it is incredible to note, like in 2017, the last time I was there was about 10 years ago, there were less than 50 resorts. Now there are 180 and at least 20 more opening in the next year or two. And we're talking about the biggest names in the business. Bulgari opens there next year. Rosewood, Aman, Capella, Mandarin Oriental, they're all coming in the next few years. And this is like $5,000 a night. So it's very much a luxury destination. What Judd, a point that he made about it was that the marine life knows for generations where these natural reefs are, and it's going to take them generations to feel comfortable about the new reefs. So this, there is muscle memory in the migratory paths. So what we've got to hope is that the tourism industry takes into account the sustainability, like actually takes on board about being sustainable. And that's not just, not using plastic straws and stuff like that, but having genuine measures to ensure that they are doing things like, getting away from diesel and having solar powered resorts, which makes sense. It absolutely makes sense about sourcing food locally, having the Maldivian lobster, not having the lobster that comes from Norway, which I think is an absolute no-brainer because it means, yes, you've got less food bales, but also it means us, the tourists, are having a more genuinely Maldivian experience.
Okay, so tell us a bit about local life.
Look, it's an interesting question because in the past, the Maldivian government kept the local islands and the resort islands separate, remembering that this is a Muslim country and bringing pork, pornography and alcohol in your luggage is forbidden. So if it is your want to travel with a little pork sausage or two in your hand luggage, I'd say don't. You can buy alcohol when you're in the Maldives, in the islands, of course. So the way that most people meet Maldivians, unless they take a dedicated local island tour, which I've done in the past, is you meet it through the resort staff. And I was really pleased to note that in these two internationally owned resorts, about half the workforce is actually Maldivian. So it might be the surf guides in the dive centre or the personal trainers, the chefs, the butlers looking after the villas or the rooms, and a lot of the wait staff, mostly men in this situation. And they all really had a genuine warmth about them. I mean, they live in what most of the world considers paradise, and they are pretty proud of it. So what's changing in the Maldives now is the rise of homestays on the local islands. About 10 years ago, the government changed its laws to allow homestays, and they range from backpacker up to fancy 5-star homestays, although, it's pretty hard to compete with some of the world's great hoteliers who have opened resorts here. But I think that homestays are the next story that the Maldives has to share.
And my last question to you is, of course, interesting for most people, how much do they cost?
Well, look, at Niama, you budget around $1,500 a night, and that will range from being half board to full board, whether you get breakfast and dinner or breakfast, lunch and dinner, and what's in your minibar and things like that. And as I said earlier, the overwater villas tend to come with a higher price tag than other types of accommodation. And Avani, around $1,200, depending on the time of year. I mean, the peak is now November through to April, which is the dry season, because look, you don't want to be, we've all been in paradise where it just rains every day, which actually happened the week before we arrived in late October. So depending on, you can get a bargain. You need to look at the weather at that time of year as well, even though weather patterns are changing dramatically. So there's my hot tip for you.
So to find out more about these properties that Belle has mentioned, go to naama.com and avanihotels.com. And if you want to see more about Belle's experiences and her amazing Bluer Than Blue, just go to her socials, Globa_Salsa on Instagram, and search up Belle Jackson on Facebook.
Our tip this week is about snagging the best deal on Travel Tuesday, which is a 24-hour window when the travel industry offers some of the steepest discounts of the year. So it falls just after the Cyber Monday sales. So once you've bought your new TV and your laptop, or in my case, dog worming tablets, the travel companies have the stage to themselves.
Yeah, and you're probably right across Black Friday or Cyber Monday, but Travel Tuesday is definitely one to watch.
Yeah, I've got to say, I am the most boring shopper in the sales season. So blowing it on travel is so much more exciting. I'm looking for suitcases at the moment, Kirsty.
And if you haven't heard the term, it was actually coined in 2017 in the US when travel companies saw people jumping online to buy travel experiences after Thanksgiving. And now we have a travel sales season, and there are some really good deals out there. So we've seen some on Club Med, Singapore Airlines, and Wendy Woo.
So travel comparison and booking website Omeo shares some tips for getting the best deals on Black Friday and Travel Tuesday, because as you've said, people are already releasing their deals now, and then they just peak at Travel Tuesday, which happens this coming Tuesday. So they say to prep ahead, make your travel bucket list and know the typical prices so that you compare them against the sales. Then get logged into your accounts and ready to book when the sales go live, because the best deals sell out in hours. And I'd add to this, have your loyalty program logins and frequent flyer numbers ready as well, because if you are points collecting or you're looking for member-only benefits such as free breakfasts and upgrades, this is the time when you're going to get them. You can't always add them retrospectively.
Yeah, and also sign up for newsletters, because obviously that'll give you the latest information, and follow the hotels and travel platforms on social media that you love so that you're the first in the know about these deals when they drop. And we've seen plenty of deals already out there. So, and if you can, be flexible about the dates and times. Obviously that's easier if you're not locked into the school year or in inflexible work.
Omeo also advises to look out for less obvious routes or destinations. So their example is, if Phuket is fully booked out, try Krabi or Koh Noi instead. And they say by choosing lesser-known destinations, you reduce your costs. Who doesn't love that? You avoid crowds and experience lesser-known attractions and cultures.
And they're also offering deals to celebrate Black Friday with up to 50% off all modes of travel in Southeast Asia this December. You just got to go and use the code Asia50 and book by midnight on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. So you've still got time, unless you're listening on playback, and then you can look out for it the following year. And we will put a link in the show notes. Next week, my guest is Carrie Hutchison, who has a more than 2-decade-long career as a travel and lifestyle editor, travel writer and ghostwriter, who decided to pack up her life in Melbourne and move to Sicily for part of the Australian winter. She explains how she did it and how you can follow in her footsteps.
And we'd love it if you followed us on socials. You'll find us at The World Awaits Podcast on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. Feel free to drop us a line at hello@theworldawaits.au. Or if you're enjoying this episode, please give us a rating or a review. That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.